Hey people, welcome back. So, up next, directly from Barcelona, where he did MC the Baruku in a fucking astronaut suit, Dr. Nic.
So smooth. I've spoken in public before, and I'll admit that was the first time that I've ever backed up on the stage. That was not a standard move. Oh, we've got slides, and we're going to make the slides go. Sweet. There we go. What's going on? This could be awkward. I don't think we're supposed to do it this way. My name's Dr. Nic Williams, and I have the distinguished honour of presenting my own slides, which I think is the more convenient way of doing it. It's much more awkward to say, let's all swap slides and see how it goes. It could be fun. You might learn something along the way. I think you'd see a lot of Googling. It's like, this is an interesting slide. I'm just going to look this up. So the talk I want to give starts here. And I saw this recently, and I've talked about Cloud Foundry and other things for ages because I find it really, really interesting. And finally, I found a sort of a tangential, off-topic quote where everyone could start together. And we go, yes, I know Jeff Bezos. I must get this talk. It's like, yes, the Amazon, I know that. Great. You lost me at slide 2, but you had me at slide 1. So anyway, Jeff Bezos, there was an article written about the top 20 witty, clever quotes that he ever gave, and I like this one a lot. And the full quote went something like, he said, a lot of people ask me, what do I see is going to happen in the future in the next 10 years? And what I never get is the question, what's not going to change in the next 10 years? And I think, and he said, I think the second question is far more interesting because that's what you can build strategy around. He said, no one's ever going to say, Jeff, I think Amazon should charge more. He said, Jeff, I never think anyone's going to say, your products turn up too quickly. And so he figured that, constantly trying to challenge prices and constantly trying to get things to people's houses faster was always going to be a requirement, and that's what he built Amazon around. I found that really, really interesting. So I started thinking, what are sort of the things that are constant? And I just looking at my own slide, and I realized that the subtitle is incorrect. That should say constant. We can fix that. Even though these are not my slides, and I apologize to the AV people, but this is agile. There we go, and let's fix the next slide when we get to it. Constant things. Your end users will always expect faster iterations of your product. If the world changes, and so the iOS 7 came out, and I was just playing with it, and almost forgot to come on stage. This is terrible! But anyway, so all of a sudden everyone had to bring out new versions of their iOS apps. Same thing, new changes happen in the world. The end users expect you to be able to ship those changes and how it affects the product quick as possible. Ideas that you have, there's very few things worse in an engineering team when you realize you no longer have the capacity to ship new things. You're just fixing stuff the whole time. So the end users always want that, and end users always want your app to be available when they want it. I mean, they don't technically care about it being up all the time. They just want it up when they want it up. So they're very, very selfish. But if you have enough of them spread across the world, it adds up to 24/7. And so this is constants. So, you should care about them. What you perhaps not care so much about, and again, my context ultimately comes from being in IT, providing IT services, but if we always remember who the ultimate user is, we can layer it out. What's changing is people are going to write things in different programming languages, in part, just to sort of show off. It's like, haha, I can put Node on a server. That's very clever. It doesn't mean you should, but it's very clever. Oh, look, I can use documented databases which have eventual consistency. And I love the phrase eventual consistency because it's a very clever way of saying not consistent. But nonetheless, Google was doing it, so we should all. And methodologies, we should pair, we shouldn't pair, we should sometimes pair, we should do it in threes, we should do it in the dark with beer. Different ways of developing, and who's to know how they're going to change. So that's all going to change, and we shouldn't build platforms and solutions that code. So I guess this is my perspective, because Jeff told us. Jeff's idea, not mine. Jeff said, we should be agile and available, and everything else should be up for grabs. So if you're building platforms and technologies that say, yes, it's going to be for Mongo, you're going to be upset when people realize that they don't want to use Mongo, because what's more important than Mongo is their data. And so they're going to move around. So so these are some of the constants, and it was great that Jeff said that, because then I can say this, and you cleverly put the two things together and say, Nick, you're on slide 4, and I'm still with you. And that's really important, because I could lose you with this next, but at least I had you for the first 5 minutes. So the thing I believe is a constant is everyone deserves nice things. This has not been the truth, but everyone got nice things. If you worked in a large company, you might have got expensive things. They weren't necessarily nice. Consumer things are nice. Corporate things are powerful. But more and more of us have, tablets and iPhones and cool things that we bought ourselves, and now we expect to be able to use those nice things at work. And if you remember the 90s, and some of you might not, if you ever worked in the 90s and, corporate search, it was like the internal app. It was a web app or a desktop app or whatever, and had search. And if you want to search for a person, well, that meant filling in the first name field and the second name field and the address field. It's like, for God's sake. And then Google came out, and Google did search nicely. It said there's a text box. And it challenged you to torment it. It said, put anything in there and see what happens. And after you'd used Google, you really couldn't go and use corporate in an intranet search with a straight face ever again. And this, I think, is the basic challenge that corporate IT has in trying to solve its users' problems, is that it doesn't respect this constant. That the employees, the people that it serves, deserve nice things. And I believe they do. So then what happens is in the public space, you get things like Heroku and Engine Yard and GitHub and beautiful, and you can go down the list of sponsors. This is a very clever thing to do if you're a speaker, is to show the sponsor slide. Because now all the sponsors will say, Dr. Nick talked about us during our talk. Anyway, I've never seen that happen before, but it amuses me no end. And most of those, well, the ones I know, have specialized in providing nice things to people on the premise that that's a constant and you can't go wrong there. So that's my introduction to some of the underlying facts. And if you're not interested in technology and etc., you're at least going to go away going, yes, Jeff, he's very clever. Dr. Nick didn't quite get to understand a word he said, but Jeff Bezos, very clever man. So warning, coming up now is really a talk about a thing that I'm in love with. And that's always awkward. You watch two people in love, it's a bit icky. They're a bit too familiar. They're just like, really? Go and have a child and relax, okay? So I'm still in that love affair phase. It's messy, it doesn't make a lot of sense, there's a lot more ambition to it perhaps than reality, but nonetheless, I find this stuff truly, truly exciting. And again, because I can now say because of Jeff. Jeff has validated everything I want to sort of explain. So first, who am I? I used to work at Engine Yard, where for a sense of scale, we were running at one point, when I left, 8,000 VMs across 1,000 or so customers. I developed, because that's somewhat proprietary, somewhat open source, I developed somewhat of a sense of I believe the ops space probably should be entirely open source, because it's really, really hard. And for one corporate entity to say, no, we have a black box system and it's going to solve all your problems. I think because of what we talked about, that things change constantly, I think it's hard. And I believe some of the best tools, and 30 years of Unix have shown this, or Linux has shown this, and the next 30 years is going to show this again. All this stuff I think needs to be open source, which is where I sort of fell in love with Cloud Foundry and the Bosh layer that comes below it. So when you get excited about a piece of technology, but you're not exactly sure how to make money from it, what do? Consulting. And that's what I did. And it's for all good lovers of Cloud Foundry. Obviously, that's a limited scope of people, so I need to get more lovers. and then I'll have more clients, and it'll be perfect. But no, really busy. I don't think I have a slide for this, but I'll tell you this quick secret. People love this statistic. 100% of people who know something about Cloud Foundry have jobs. So it doesn't mean if you're unemployed you should look at Cloud Foundry. If you know ops and you care about automation, this is a great future space to get into. So the idea of Cloud Foundry is, sort of broken up into sort of different axes of interest, but put simply, you can deploy any type of app. It's built using, we now support the Heroku build packs, which I think is going to become the standard for sort of, separating concerns. I think it's really clever. A lot of the, sort of the sort of the next iteration of people saying, yes, we should build a PaaS, perhaps built on Docker and things, are all going to go and use build packs, so I'm pretty sure that'll become a standard. Bind any type of service, because who knows what's going to come out in terms of data, messaging, etc. You want all the apps to be independently upgradable. Big problem if you say, all right, everyone, we're moving to a new version of Postgres. Are you ready? You'll get people quitting. That's not going to be fun. So all the apps need to be upgradable independently or not at all. Really, I mean, if it runs on Postgres 8.3 with Ruby 1.8.6, leave it be. You shouldn't, the platform shouldn't force people to upgrade or force them to be kicked off. And you say, but 1.8.6 and 8.3 are really old. Yes, but whatever you're running today will one day be really old. And people just want to leave things running. They don't want to talk about them ever again. So your platform should support that sadistic idea. You want the platform, Cloud Foundry has tools and APIs, and I guess the part I found super exciting was the fact that it came with a whole bunch of admin things. Which means that I could run it. And when the first time I ever ran Cloud Foundry for myself, it was like having my own Heroku. I was a big fan of Heroku. I wasn't allowed to use it because I worked at Engineered. But it was really nice and pretty and did a lot of wonderful things. And I looked on BitTorrent a lot, but I could never find the source code. So you don't have BitTorrent in Germany. It's a very clever way of stealing things. Anyway, but it does involve someone, all right, let's not talk about it. Swedish people, you can't trust them. So Cloud Foundry being entirely open source is one thing. That they actually came with the deployment tools was really important to me. That's a picture. No, so it has a website. There is a hosted version. So a bit like, so I used to I do talks, and if you look online into Dr. Nic and Cloud Foundry, often you'll find talks that say, build your own Heroku with Cloud Foundry. And someone said to me once, they didn't use a stern face, but that's what I felt. I said, are you saying Heroku is built with Cloud Foundry? And I said sheepishly, well, I'm just trying to get them interested. Because they don't know what this is. And so it's not going to impress them. But they know Heroku, and so I lie a lot on that particular topic for people's own good. Anyway, there is a company that actually, the primary sponsor of Cloud Foundry, and you pick a favorite open source project that you use and think how many full-time employees are on it. And if you're lucky, it's greater than 0. But Cloud Foundry has, I think, now 40 full-time people. That's just at Pivotal. IBM is putting full-time people on it, and a bunch of other companies are coming online and putting full-time people. This is the fancy dashboard for Pivotal show, just to sort of show that it exists. One of the things I like about Cloud Foundry, why you should care about it, is many of you can't use Heroku or Engineered or any other American company because obviously they've all sold shares to the NSA. They're very evil people, and you can't trust any of them. They all want to steal your money and then turn it into American dollars and then spend it on cocaine. And so that might seem an elaborate ploy, but nonetheless, they're all doing it. So you want to be able to run your own services in Europe. So this is an example of a company that's running Cloud Foundry as a service in Germany, wherever that is. All right, so what does it look like? It looks like this. And I'm going to pretend to type. I made a mistake. Oh, how embarrassing. Because the client side, and I'm showing the CLI, there's also Eclipse plugins and other IDEs, but I don't use a CLI. I don't use an IDE, so I really can't honestly show you that. So, but the point is, you can point it at any Cloud Foundry, whether it's a hosted one like the Pivotal.io or one you might run yourself, which is where it gets really exciting. It is truly exciting to boot up, a cluster of machines and say, this is running Cloud Foundry. But here we are, logging in, and then we're going to deploy an app. We'll look at some apps. What am I doing? I did this screencast this morning. You'd think I'd remember. I was in a hurry, and I hadn't had breakfast yet, so if I name the app like Pancakes or something, you'll know where I was thinking. So like Heroku, you use git push, whatever. Here it's just CF push. Slightly different mechanism. It's actually taking a tarball and pushing it up, as opposed to using git. We're just, what you do. You say how many dynos, or what we call instances, how big a dyno do you want? It's artificially given 3 options there, but there are people running 10 gig dynos because they have big Java apps. So it sort of has the 2-directional scaling. And no services. Services like, the marketplace. Do I want Postgres or whatever? Deploying an app. It's uploading it. Should tell a joke. But it turns out that in our profession, there are no jokes. It's a singularly unfunny profession. So this is the Heroku build pack. They are slightly modified, and we are trying to constantly keep them in sync. But the primary distinction between a Heroku build pack and a Cloud Foundry build pack is our build packs can't assume that you can access S3, because people run Cloud Foundry inside completely isolated networking infrastructure. So in which case bundle would fail and all this stuff would fail. So we can't be assuming that. So we do it slightly differently. So we're running it. Now we can attempt to scale it. This is me attempting to scale it outside the capacity, because different organizations have different limits, and this is me scaling it successfully. You might think, Nick, why did you show me an error? Well, I was hungry for pancakes, and I just wanted to move on. So this is Cloud Foundry. I find it's really, God damn it, Nick, stop making errors, and then forgetting you're doing them and not pretending they're real. I didn't cut out that. I'll admit I do a little bit of post-production, but obviously not enough. There we go. So there's our 10 instances, dynos, call them what you want. They're all running inside Linux containers, which you've heard about, you don't know what they are, and quite frankly, they're difficult. But they're very exciting. The idea of encapsulating both processes and isolation, and also the whole notion of Docker, and hopefully we get Docker inside Cloud Foundry. That whole space is really quite interesting. But it's completely encapsulated. Really, really simple to use. You can, and like build packs, you can bring any build pack, so you make up an entirely new programming language. I mean, just say you decided, hey, you know what's a good idea? For kicks, let's run JavaScript on the server side. You could write a build pack, and you put it on the internet, and people would talk about you, and then you personally would move on and do something else, but other people would probably get tricked into think it's like a thing you should do, and they'd probably go off and give it a name and a logo. And anyway, sorry for any Node.js people, but you're funny. All right, so there are alternatives. This space, I like Cloud Foundry. It's a very big space. Everyone's writing it differently and doing it differently, so it's very hard to look at all of them. OpenShift came out a year or so ago. It's done by Red Hat. I couldn't run it. I couldn't figure that out, so I sort of abandoned that. The DESI, or DS, or how you want to pronounce it, is based on Docker. Flynn will also be based on Docker. Flynn has done things a little bit differently. They put up a web page and a little animated GIF, and started raising money. That's the status they're at. Not the normal way of doing open source, I think, but nonetheless, who am I to say what's right or wrong? Good on them. But I'll put them up there just for that joke. So that's one half, and I find Cloud Foundry is really interesting, and especially in Europe, I think it's something that either you're a big company or a small company, it's relevant because you want nice things, but you don't trust Americans. And these are that's another constant. I should put that in the slide at the front, with that really evil eagle. If you've ever seen the picture, it's the American flag with the eagle that's looking very sternly. And the first time I ever saw that was hilarious, because apparently they just discovered oil, some more oil in Australia, which is where I'm from, if you're wondering why you can't understand a word I'm saying. And the slides and the picture said, Australia discovered oil? Sounds like they need some more freedom. So the freedom eagle of evil. So I care. One of the things I came to care about was you see these open source projects, and this really came. I'd seen this idea a couple of times, but Twitter came out with a project called Zipkin, And instead of just open sourcing something and just having a terrible README, they had a tremendous README. It had a screenshot and everything. And he said, I want this. What it was it would show you could trace requests all the way through your sort of service-oriented architecture to see where they were going and how long they took. Really interesting. And you think, great, I'm going to deploy this. And then they showed you the architecture diagram of some of the things you'd need to set up first before you put Zipkin on top of that. And it was like you'd need Zookeeper, which is a multi-VM clustered lock management system. And you'd need Cassandra because at that time, Twitter used Cassandra and no one else did. And a bunch of other things that sat on top of those. One of them, actually, we exploded that one out. Underneath was more Cassandra. And I'm thinking, why open source it? Why not just, it's like that cartoon that says, the mapper, how do I get data out of the database? And it says, what you do is you create a MapReduce function, and then the last slide says, did you just tell me to go fuck myself? I believe I did, Bob. It was a lot like that. It felt like Twitter was basically saying, we made something, you can get fucked. But that's not really what they're doing. What they're doing is not saying that. What they're saying is, and here's the email to our HR department. If you'd like to see this run, please join Twitter. And I don't like that form of open source, that sort of open source that says, yeah, this is just part of our HR department. Literally, it's coming out of the HR budget. That's why we open source stuff. And I get a bit icky about that. So I become really interested in the question of how do I run other people's stuff. And one of the reasons I fell in love with Cloud Foundry was in part its features, but in part because they had an answer to the question, how do I run Cloud Foundry? Always have, since the very early days. Originally, it was a set of chef recipes, and then in April last year, they released a thing called Bosh. And here's a screenshot of something that Bosh can do. Bosh can show you your entire cluster and tell you exactly what's on it. Make it really easy to SSH, really easy to start different parts, really relatively easy to scale out and do interesting stuff. And but then I get people saying, so what's Bosh and why should I give two rat's asses? No, they don't say that. That's what I would say. Similarly, that's a phrase I would say. I don't know why I'm that interested in rats. But nonetheless, it's one of those Australian phrases which I wish would leave my brain so I wouldn't say it out loud in front of people that's being recorded. So, what is Bosh? So as I said, Bosh is in part an orchestration system, but another way of looking at it is perhaps it's the next evolution of packaging. Packaging in the sense of what do we want next from packaging. And so we go back and we look at packaging, and say, sort of Red Hat packaging and that sort of thing. It was about packaging something and it would run something, which I thought was very nice to say. You would yum install something and I have MySQL. You go, what's the configuration for it? You don't need to worry about how we configured it. I don't know, Bob. I think I do. Not going to say I don't trust the boffins at Red Hat to run MySQL, but this is my company we're worrying about. So next, what we did was said, okay, Red Hat, that was really lovely, thanks for the package, but we're going to do configuration management. And everyone got very excited about Chef and Puppet, and they thought Chef and Puppet was going to solve all their problems. And eventually what they realized at the back of the book was, and you still need to know how to configure MySQL. So we really still hadn't solved that problem. And quite frankly, you never get away from the fact that if you're going to run MySQL, you need to know how to run MySQL. Everything else is just automation and perhaps making it easier to do things when you're in a hurry. But someone still needs to know this stuff. So Bosh doesn't take away that there's going to be MySQL configuration. Perhaps at this stage in the story you may have switched from MySQL to something good like Postgres, but MySQL is much easier to say. So Bosh is this idea of both packaging but also deployment, and not just of single things or single machines, but of entire systems that span both infrastructure and perhaps even regions. So that's how I put it. Now, I first did this slide, which I think actually says platform CF. So I actually stole this slide, and I apologize. I was too lazy to go and change the subtitles, but it gives me a segue. I first showed this slide at a Cloud Foundry conference, where it's just Cloud Foundry people. So you say things to Cloud Foundry people what they want to hear. But you're a discerning audience. And so I will make a slight modification. I actually think the next step might be Docker. And I would really like, it's a big project, and I don't know if we're going to be able to convince the Bosh team to do it, but I think parts of Bosh could be ripped out and use Docker as that infrastructure, because it has a lot of the similar ideas of immutable infrastructure that are becoming popular. Chad Fowler's going to talk about immutable infrastructure at RubyConf, probably different sort of way of going about it. But the idea of having a provable VM that's guaranteed to be the same every time, whether it's hard-baked or whether it's built based on hard-baked things. And Docker has that concept of provable hard-baked descriptions, which I like. And so does Bosh. All right, so what is Bosh? Let's use pictures, because some of you are thinking there's too many words. Don't understand the thing you're saying. You're speaking with an accent, show me a picture of a box. I don't know actually which one of you said that, but anyway, there's the box. So let's pretend this is a server, because servers come in boxes. I don't know. The plugs are on the other side. A box. Sorry, that's not right. The box was a package, a thing you're going to run. That was MySQL, which, it's ugly, so you put it in a box. And so that was the Red Hat part of the story. So then you're going to say, well, I need to build up a server, so we're going to put that in a shipping container. And we use Chef to organize the boxes in the shipping container. So it's an elaborate metaphor, but go with me. And so then what we do is we use Chef inside each one, and then we put them next to each other and hope that they sit still. I hope they talk to each other. Chef is not about orchestration or communicating. It's telling the thing on there to behave. And you hope that they behave in a fashion that works. So we go for 9, and I found this picture on the internet, which is where most of you find cat pictures. I obviously don't Google as well as you do, and I found shipping containers. And I think one of us isn't doing Google correctly. But anyway, and if you can see at the back, it says Indiana Jones and Mad Max. I have no idea who put this picture together, what the original context was. They said, you know what? I don't think Indiana Jones can hold this on his own. He needs Mad Max. Take a picture. But obviously it was done before Instagram came out because there's no tint. So next what happens, you're feeling pretty frisky about yourself. You've got 9 servers and it scales and grows. And I remember hearing Adam Jacobs talk. He gave a talk. He's one of the creators of Chef, and he gives keynotes at ChefConf where for 45 minutes he doesn't talk about Chef. It's like you play a drinking game, and every time he says, you don't drink at all. You could be sober at the end. It's very clever how he does it. But nonetheless, he talks about this business we're in. And in the first ChefConf, he sort of talked about the idea that when you've got 5 servers, you definitely know what's going on. You can put them all in your brain. And at 5,000 servers, you definitely don't know what's going on. You've got no idea what's going on. You know that you need help. He said the tricky part is around the 500 mark. That's where you might think you know what's going on, but you don't. And he said that's one of the problems you can have. So here's 500 servers. And here's what happens to your 500 servers when you're not looking. So it's awkward. You live in Europe, you've watched the people in the south, and it's been very funny down in Italy. Let's take our ship as close as we can, but let's not crash. And they do, because they're Italians, and they can't drive a boat. Oh, I don't know who drove the boat, but it's, it was near Italy, so probably someone from Italy probably tripped them, and they fell over. I went, I broke a leg, and I pushed my ship over. I have so many quality European jokes. This is what comes from being part of the British Commonwealth, where you get British humour. And I'll be honest, if you've never watched British humour, a lot of it's about Germany. So every time I make a joke about Italy or some other country, I'm quite pressed because I have yet to make a German joke, of which none are funny. All right, so Bosh takes the next. So the metaphor I have for Bosh is it does configuration management inside the containers, but also organizes thousands of containers. All right, so that's what it does. It can talk to any different infrastructure. It doesn't at the moment, but it can. It's built so that it can. And these are the ones that have been written and or are in progress. And the one that's, from a developer's perspective, is super exciting is the LXC one. We use Warden, but Docker, put Docker in there, and it's a similar premise. And I've been playing with this, the idea of actually have it on my laptop. I can deploy the entire Cloud Foundry on my laptop in a Vagrant box on an aeroplane, because it has no external dependencies, which is how Bosh works. So it's super. So perhaps there's no music. Which, now that I've looked at that, in love means there should be a music. It never occurred to me till just now that it's surrounded by pink things. That I should have some sort of violin music or something. But anyway, it's you're just going to get more of my monotonic voice. So I wanted to finish off the things that I like about Bosh. So I showed you Cloud Foundry before, which is fantastic. But when it comes to running large systems, and the large system we're running here is Cloud Foundry, and when I say large, I mean we've got 10 VMs. That's not large at all. But But if I actually showed you like thousands of VMs, it would just scroll off the screen. Not very good demo. So we've got a Bosh deploy of Cloud Foundry, and we're using Cloud Foundry there. We're looking at the apps. And then we pause for no good reason, and we go, let's SSH inside one of the VMs. Which, I mean, SSHing into a machine is not good ops. Let's agree with that. You should remove all reasons for doing that. But in this case, I'm going in to look at some logs. I don't need to. There is a way of aggregating logs, and you should set that up, Logstash and whatever. But for the sake of the demo, let's go and look at some logs. And we're going to trail some logs. That's all the router information that's coming through, which is kind of cool. There's a message bus, and you can just watch Cloud Foundry living, which I think is pretty special. And there we are. We just call a request, and up the top there, you can sort of see that request coming through the router and heading off somewhere. The same router is used for the organizing bits like the cloud controller or the API as for the apps. So that's that. So the other cool things you can do is you can see Bosh comes with a private DNS. So you can look, all the VMs get a name, and you can just use those for describing things. So that's nice. It means you, don't have to become reliant upon an external DNS and how to configure that, but it's automatic. It just sets it up. So you can sort of see based on the different IP addresses, different names. It's very cool. Some of you have never done this stuff before, and it's like going, that looks stupid, why would you even do that as a job? But for those of you who've ever done this manually, you're thinking, this is pretty cool. I can't believe I've done this shit job for 20 years, and now you're showing me this. And I apologize that the two of you are sort of interlaced, and I can't just talk to one side of the room or the other. But trust me, this is super awesome. From the command line, you can get a basic look at the stats of the machines. Again, at some point, you're really going to want to push this out into other systems to get pretty graphs, etc. This is a description of that. So lots of YAML. And this is not the best part of it, I'll be honest. This causes people grief. Because with all this text is infinite opportunities to get it wrong. That's the downside. So one of the things we're trying to do is to make it tell you that you screwed up faster. So that you find out immediately what you did wrong and how to fix it, as opposed to 20 minutes from now, which is never a good time. One of the cool things is when you do, so what we're doing here is we're going to scale out the DEAs. The DEAs in Cloud Foundry where it runs apps, so like where the dynos are run, and what we're doing is going from 3 to 6. And what Bosh, you don't tell Bosh, it's like, I want to add 3. What you do is you say, I want 6. And Bosh says, well, I've got 3. I'm going to add 3. Is that all right with you? And you say yes, and off it goes. So now it's adding the 3. Now, normally, when you do a demo, you show things working, because that's awesome. When I wrote this, it didn't work. And I could have just gone back and done it properly. But this wasn't my fault. This was just a stupid, issue with the daft default quotas that OpenStack comes with. 20 VMs. Why? Why would you impose that by default? What problem does that solve for anyone? So anyway, I thought I'd demonstrate something else. And what I'm demonstrating is I'm going to delete every virtual machine except Bosh and other sort of management VM, and demonstrate a feature called the cloud check, or CCK. And what it's doing is it's saying, I'm expecting there to be 10 or 11 VMs. One of them's, the cloud controller, 6 of them are the DEAs. That's what I'm expecting. Let's have a look what I've got. Oh, look, I'm missing all of them. And so it gives for each one the option to bring them back. And that's what I'm doing. And so then it goes off and recreates them. Which I thought was pretty cool. So yes, I should show it being awesome, but quite frankly, doing ops is not awesome. And tools to help all the not awesome bits become awesome are really invaluable. Now, it turns out that this actually took a lot longer than I thought it was. In part, the Piston Cloud version of OpenStack comes with secure delete on by default. Secure delete is where it zeroes every part of the VM, which takes time. A long time. And when you're stressed out trying to do a screencast the morning before you talk, you hate secure deploy, so secure delete. So anyway, that took forever. And then the things started coming up, and I was just getting a bit shitty. So I decided I was going to add a ticket. So this is always good fun if you're in front of the core team of the project and 300 of their friends, is to write a ticket to them. Just when you might, way people at the back can read this, just when you might be most stressed, your entire production system has been deleted by someone with dashboard access, or you're preparing a screencast for the conference Bosh CCK brings back the VMs one at a time. And then I demonstrate how you paste in text in a formatted way with the handy triple tick syntax. If you didn't know that, it's pretty fancy. I think it, being Bosh, I think it wants to torture me. It loves me, but the love hurts. So anyway, if you're going to write tickets, yes, you could use emoticons or you could just write prose. And it's still going. So even while I was writing that ticket, it took 16 minutes to bring that cluster back up. Nonetheless, it did bring it back up, which was pretty cool. Some of them were in a failing state, but when we did a deploy, it was good. And I just thought that was brilliant. And then we go and finish it. So really, it can keep going. It really doesn't matter. There's a lot of... Cloud Foundry is a big project. And how each and every person might run it is infinite permutation and configuration. But there are a bunch of really cool tools for doing it and getting it running and feeling good about yourself, such to the point you can imagine doing it, if you sat down for more than 20 minutes of having success. And instead of showing you how those tools work, I figured I'd tell you that Cloud Foundry is awesome and that every other time you hear about it, you can sort of say, yeah, I know about that, Dr. Nic told me. But really, I think it's a technology that for most of you, you're going to be seeing more of. It really solves lots and lots of corporate problems, IT problems, and even for small businesses. Find a PaaS company that's running in Europe, and feel free to experience the nice things that we in America take for granted, like I don't know, knowing there's a government agency watching over us. So, if you could show me how I sign up to become a Euro citizen, that'd be awesome. Thank you very much.